Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Miami Dolphins NFL Live fan chats that's titled Any Hope Left? Uh, I would say if the 0-3 Dolphins find a way to lose to the 0-3 Jets at home on the next Monday night, there is a certain Onion headline that would be highly appropriate. Man who thought he'd lost all hope loses last bit of additional hope he didn't know he still had. That would be the appropriate way to describe in the scenario in which the Dolphins fall to 0-4 by giving the Jets their first win of the year. Colin says Waller is expected to be on the snap count for Monday's game versus the Jets via McDaniel. So let me get this straight. 3 weeks into the season, including an extended break, thanks to the third game being Monday night, and Darren Waller is still going to be taking limited snaps. Bolfar says, depressed Saints fan here. Can we just go 0-17? Unfortunately, you play the Falcons twice, so that's not going to happen. If the Falcons are going to be losing to the Panthers 30-0, it might not be either the Falcons or Saints that end up as the worst team. It might not be the Panthers or the Saints that end up as the worst team in the NFC South. Apparently, Nick Bosa suffered a torn ACL in his right knee and will require season-ending surgery. So, 49ers fans, welcome to more pain. To go on top of your pain with a side dish of pain. Remind me how the 49ers are 3-0. Is every single win for the 49ers coming with a literal blood cost this season? Bolvar says they're going to go back to Kirk, and it will be against the Saints, and I'm going to hate life. At least I'm a Vegas fan. Collins says CeeDee Lamb out for 3 to 4 weeks. Rest in peace, CeeDee Lamb fantasy owners. Meanwhile, Tyler Ferguson owners like myself, give more targets to Tyler Ferguson. I am so glad I picked up that dude on waivers this past week. I actually started him in fantasy this week. Rosado, if you're here, GG, man. I am so sorry you lost James Conner. Bolvar says Nick Bosa is cooked. He tore his left ACL in 2020, has now torn his right ACL. His career is going to die from this. Colin says, meh, still okay at wide receiver despite CeeDee being out. Yeah, I am so sorry for Rosado. I am beating him right now by over 80 points in fantasy. And he just lost James Conner for the entire year. he already had Joe Burrow on his IR slot. So now Rosado's going to have to choose to either drop. He'll probably have to drop James Conner, but he has J.K. Dobbins, who actually had a good game. So Rosado can just go with J.K. Dobbins as one of his running backs. So yeah, let's talk about some of the insanity that happens yesterday. Jake Browning looked absolutely horrendous against the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, Isaiah Rodgers had 2 defensive touchdowns. So, yeah. Cincinnati turned over the ball 5 times, and 2 of those ended up being returned for touchdowns, as the Vikings cruised to a 48-10 victory. Carson Wentz did more than admirably against Jake Browning and the Bengals. And then, of course, you have the Patriots also committing 5 turnovers in their game, in spite of the Steelers begging them to win that game. The Patriots, who could have won by 20, end up losing to the Steelers 21-14. Indiana Jones ravaged whatever was supposed to be opposing him 41-20 in the Colts win against the Titans. A cost fumble and interception by Nico Collins and CJ Stroud in the final 2 drives for the Texans sealed their 3rd straight loss of the season against the Jaguars. The Jaguars are now tied. The Jaguars are now 2-1, and the Texans are 0-3. The Carolina Panthers humiliated the Falcons 30-0 in a game where Michael Penix Jr. threw for 18 of 36 for 172 yards and 2 interceptions, and eventually got benched for Kirk Cousins. I think there were 5 blocked field goals in the early window, at least 2 of which were returned from touchdowns. Collins says 4 out of 5 of the turnovers were on the Patriots running back since they fumbled on the goal line. The Patriots should have won the game. Yeah, Omarion Hampton's stock is now to the moon with Harris being out for the year. Is Najee Harris out for the year too? Let's see. I hadn't seen any indications that he was out for the year. I thought they were testing it. Well, it did not look good for Najee Harris, but I don't think it's been confirmed yet that he's out for the year. Yeah, Drake May threw a pick in the end zone to end the first half. So, what else happened? You had the insane comeback win where the Rams had a 26-7 lead over the Eagles. A 26-7 lead over the Eagles in the second half of the game. And then the Eagles offense finally woke up as Jalen Hurts passed for 226 yards and had 4 total touchdowns, and A.J. Brown had 109 receiving yards and the touchdown, and Devonta Smith also scored. Now, normally you would have called me insane for benching Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith, but I had started essentially Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze in their place, or should I say Caleb Williams and Keenan Allen. Caleb had almost 300 passing yards and 4 passing touchdowns against the Cowboys. And Keenan Allen ended up with a crucial 20-yard touchdown catch to tie the game against Denver. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. The Rams lost on a blocked field goal that was returned for a touchdown. How often does that happen? And then, of course, Tampa Bay, for the 3rd week in a row, Baker Mayfield leads a game-winning last-minute drive with Chase McLaughlin sinking the field goal to beat the Jets 29-27, meaning the Jets are also 0-3 on the year. Marcus Mariota and the Commanders took care of business against the Raiders, blowing them out 41-24. The Chargers, the Chargers recovered from allowing 17 unanswered points and rallied to come back into the game and win it on the leg of Dicker the kicker, 23-20 against the Broncos. The Seahawks obliterated the Saints 44-13. Remember when that matchup was again against 2 of the biggest powerhouses in the league? The 49ers, after the Cardinals scored a safety thanks to a holding penalty to take a 15-13 lead, Mac Jones and the 49ers led what proved to be the game-winning drive when San Francisco sealed the victory on the leg of Eddie Pinheiro, 16-15. And the Bears got revenge and then some on their old coach Matt Eberflus as Caleb Williams torched whatever was supposed to be the Cowboys defense 31-14. And of course, Kansas City unfortunately got the win last night, 22-9, in one of the ugliest games of football you'll ever see, dropping the Giants to 0-3. Good news is I think Kansas City is still at the bottom of the AFC West. And for the most hilarious game of the week, it's Achilles injury for Harris yet. I wouldn't be shocked if it's season ending, but it hasn't been confirmed. So what we just witnessed in Cleveland is one of the most hilarious choke jobs we've seen since week 1. With less than 4 minutes to go in the game, the Packers had a 10-0 lead and a 93.2% chance of winning the game. And then Cleveland scores a field goal. And on the next drive, Jordan Love throws a brutal interception on 3rd and 3. And it sets up Cleveland in the red zone, and Cleveland finally gets the touchdown. Cleveland gets the touchdown to tie the game. And then the Packers go down the field, and Brandon McManus's field goal attempt was blocked and recovered by the Browns. And then Seismith, however you pronounce the Browns kicker's name, he nails a 55-yard field goal to stun the Packers. The Browns win 13-10. And now I think the Cowboys are going to be not just destroyed by the Packers, they're going to be obliterated from existence, because the Packers have to be insanely pissed off after losing to Cleveland of all teams. So Guitar Crow says, I guess answering the question about is there any hope left? Nope, better luck next year, folks. So yeah, those are all the games that have taken place so far. Also, Bobby Greer has passed away. He was the father of Mike and Chris Greer, who are GMs of the San Jose Sharks and the Miami Dolphins, respectively. Bobby Greer has passed away at the age of 82. He spent 7 decades as a football coach and front office executive with 3 NFL teams. So yeah, that's I have to imagine that Chris Greer will now need to take some time to mourn and to say goodbye to his dad. And so yeah, here's the situation right now. The only undefeated teams remaining in the NFL at this moment after week 3 are the Bills, Colts, Chargers, Eagles, Buccaneers, and Raiders. It's evenly spread with three undefeated teams in each of the conferences, one for each of 3 out of 4 divisions. If the Ravens win tonight against the Lions, there will be a three-way tie for first place in that division. And if the Lions win the game against the Ravens tonight, they will join the three-way tie for first in their division. But I think, at any rate, the Lions would still be behind both the Packers and the Vikings now, because the Lions' divisional record is 1-1, and the Packers and Vikings are both 1-0 in the division. And with the Bengals, Steelers, and Ravens, the Ravens have a chance to immediately, or no, excuse me, it would depend on it would depend on things like points for and points against. I think the Ravens might end up at the top of the AFC North if they win tonight. So yeah, a whole slew of injuries from yesterday. Nick Bosa tore his ACL. Tyrone Tracy is going to time with a dislocated shoulder, which means Cam Scattaboo fantasy owners are going to get an additional boost. CeeDee Lamb could miss 3 to 4 weeks with a high left ankle sprain. James Conner is out for the year because his entire lower leg was bent in a way that no leg should be bent. And it's all but guaranteed that Najee Harris is also going to miss the rest of the year. It looked like it was an Achilles, and if he tore the Achilles, that means his season is over. So we had numerous different backup quarterbacks in play this week. And right off the bat, Carson Wentz was a perfectly fine game manager who went for 14 of 20 for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. Carson Wentz didn't really have to do it. He just had to watch as the Bengals kept choking and Jake Browning threw 2 interceptions. And then you have Tyrod Taylor filling in for Justin Fields and ultimately falling. Tyrod threw for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, and one interception. Mac Jones was able to get just enough accomplished. 284 yards passing, a touchdown, and an interception. Mac Jones was able to lead his team to victory for the second week in a row against a highly suspect Cardinals team. And of course, Marcus Mariota did admirably against the Raiders, passing for 207 yards and the touchdown. It was mainly Washington's grounds game that got them the victory. So yeah. Though I am really looking forward to Brandon Perna's winners and losers to recap just how insane this week of football was. At least we didn't have to sit through the Dolphins. At least we didn't have to through the Dolphins game this Sunday. So, over on ESPN, every week they apparently do something called the Hemi Award, which is essentially ESPN lets NFL fans vote every week before the Monday night's game. They vote on who in the NFL was him on Sunday. And this week's nominees for a Hemi Award are Caleb Williams, A.J. Brown, Isaiah Rodgers, and Justin Herbert. Caleb Williams went 19 of 28 for 298 yards and 4 touchdowns. He matched his career high with 4 touchdown passes as Chicago beat the Cowboys 31-14, giving Ben Johnson his first win as an NFL head coach. Williams also posted a personal best 142.6 passer rating after absorbing an NFL high 68 sacks as a rookie and 6 more over the first 2 weeks. He wasn't sacked at all in week 3, the first clean sheet of his pro career. It's almost like the Cowboys need a high-end pass rusher to help them out on defense. By halftime, he had already thrown for 239 yards, the most he has recorded in any half. A.J. Brown, 6 catches, 109 yards, a touchdown. Held without a catch before halftime, A.J. Brown jump-started the Eagles' second-half rally after they fell behind 26-7 against the Rams. He went on to post his first 100-yard game of the season, finishing with 6 receptions for 109 yards and the 50th touchdown of his career. 2 of his biggest grabs, a 25-yarder and 23-yarder, came on 3rd and 10, extending drives and keeping the comeback alive as Philly beat the Rams 33-26 on Sunday. Isaiah Rodgers, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interception, 2 touchdowns. A free agent pickup in his first season as a full-time starter, Rodgers offered a historic half for Minnesota. Per the team, he's the first player in NFL history to score 2 defensive touchdowns and force 2 fumbles in a single game, and he did all of it before halftime. He opened up with an 87-yard pick 6, 87-yard pick 6, later broke up an end zone throw to T. Higgins. Then, after the 2-minute warning, punched the ball out of Noah Fant's hands, recovered it, and rumbled 67 yards for his second touchdown. On the Bengals' next series, he forced another fumble, this time on Jamar Chase, which Jeff Okuda recovered at the 48, Vikings 48, and the offense soon converted into a Jordan Mason 5-yard touchdown. Rodgers' first half springboarded the Vikings to a 34-3 halftime lead that turned into a 48-10 victory over the Bengals. And finally, Justin Herbert, who went 28 of 47, 300 yards and a touchdown. After a shaky start with a few early misfires to Keenan Allen, Herbert engineered the Chargers' comeback. An 11-yard strike to Allen on 3rd and 10, a 23-yard connection with Omarion Hampton, then a rolling left back pylon 20-yard touchdown to Allen with 2:44 left to tie it. Following Denver's ensuing 3-and-out, Herbert went 4 for 4 on the final march to set up Cameron Dicker's 43-yard walk-off, sealing a 23-20 win and the Chargers' first 3-0 start since 2002. Herbert finished the game as the youngest player ever to reach 2,000 career completions in 27 years, 195 days, and the second fastest to the mark, 82 games. The game also marked 3 straight wins over AFC West foes to open the season. So yeah, that's those things I read were just the options for the Hymne Award. I voted Isaiah Rodgers for just an insane performance. So if you had to make any predictions for tonight's game, what would you say? This is Lions and Ravens. The Lions, who got blown out by the Packers in week 1 and then turned around and had a resounding victory against the Bears. And then finally, the Ravens, who had one of the biggest collapses you'll ever see in the fourth quarter of an NFL game against the Bills in week 1, and then turned around and destroyed Cleveland the next week. So both are, I would say, teams that got off to a very shaky start. To start the football season, and then turned it around in rather convincing fashion. I mean, the Lions, they both had the benefit. The Lions had the benefit of playing the Bears, and the Ravens had the benefit of playing the Browns. Of course, both the Bears and the Browns just won their games. The Bears win you could see coming from a mile away this week. This was their revenge game against Matt Eberflus, after all. But the Browns just shot the NFL world by beating the Packers. Like, how on earth did the first loss of the year get handed to the Packers by the Browns with 40-year-old Joe Flacco as the quarterback? The Packers ended up with Micah Parsons, and his only contribution was essentially getting called for multiple costly penalties. Let's see. Week 3 most frustrating losses. So number 4 on the list is of the Broncos losing to the Chargers. They had an 89.2% win expectancy with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. A lot of the Broncos' self-inflicted wounds comes down to overthrow. You sacked Justin Herbert 5 times, won the turnover battle, had more rushing yards than the Chargers, and you still lost because of overthrows, like Brandon Perna so succinctly puts it. Let's see. So yeah, there's not much left to talk about except what will what will happen tonight between the Lions and Ravens, which that game has massive implications for the early outlook for both the AFC and NFC North. It essentially will determine whether the Ravens or the Lions are able to course correct and get themselves back in the conversation for winning their own division. Like, on paper, the Ravens should have the AFC North in the bag. The Steelers essentially got bailed out repeatedly by boneheaded turnovers by the Patriots. The Bengals look absolutely horrendous without Joe Burrow. And the Browns were one Green Bay shooting themselves in the foot repeatedly away from starting 0-3. So yeah, it's. I'll have to take a look here at the game. Baltimore is favored 4.5. That's a little. That's a little high to be favoring the Ravens. Do you really trust the Ravens in any given game after the BS they pulled to choke that what should have been the statement victory against the Bills? Does anyone have any score predictions for Lions Ravens? SoFlo says Shmei and Cone Piece say hi. Hello. How you doing? You're the first person to comment at all in about 25 minutes. I was worried that I had somehow lost connection. So so we have to agree that the Packers losing to the freaking Browns has got to be the most hilarious loss of week 3, right? Like I can't even think of anything that comes close. Honorable mention, I guess, to the Texans who went 0-3 because they couldn't beat the Jaguars. I mean, at this point, you could swear Tom is pulling the perfect script. The videos. And I lost connection to my camera. Was that a prediction? Hang on a second. This is so annoying with the camera just glitching like. Is that a prediction, SoFlo, that Jahmyr Gibbs gets 61 fantasy points, or is that how many points he has already through 2 weeks? Yeah, the Colts are insane. I mean, they got to play the Titans this week, so I really don't think there's yet an accurate gauge on how good of a team they are. The Broncos lost to the Chargers in almost the exact same fashion that they lost to the Colts in week 2. Let me see. When are the Colts getting to go up against the... Oh, they have to play at the Rams. They have to play an angry Rams team that pissed away a 26-7 lead to the Eagles and lost on a blocked field goal touchdown. Okay, week 4 has to be when the Colts come crashing down to earth, right? Or if not, most certainly it's going to be in week 7 when they play at the Chargers. Having to play both LA teams is something I would not be envious of. Let's look at the Colts schedule. They have to play at the Rams, which if the Colts finds the same offensive groove that the Eagles did in the second half of their game against the Rams, that's become a winnable game. Then they play versus the Raiders and the Cardinals, both winnable games. I would be shocked, honestly, if the Chargers found a way to lose to the Colts in week 7. Then you have the game against the Titans, at Steelers versus the Falcons, at Kansas City, against the Texans, Jaguars, Seahawks might give them some trouble. 49ers, maybe the team is healthy by that point. Jaguars and Texans. This is not a tough schedule. The Colts could win the AFC South with this schedule. Mostly because the Colts get to play the rest of the AFC South. It's SoFlo says not a prediction, it's foreshadowing. That's what I need him to do. SoFlo says Colts are going to win that game. Which one, against the Rams or the Chargers? There's no way they beat them both. I'm calling it right now. Eisenite says, did you see how the next Dolphins game will now be broadcast on Comedy Central instead of ESPN? Just kidding. Well, it should be relegated to Comedy Central since this upcoming primetime Monday night game between the Dolphins and Jets, where the Dolphins get to break out their fancy new rivalry jerseys for the affair, is against two 0-3 teams with coaches desperate to get their first victory of the year. In Aaron Glenn's case, he's still waiting for his first victory as a head coach. If the Dolphins lose to the Jets on Monday night, then the 0.1% of hope left for the season, it will be gone. There will be no recovering if the Dolphins manage to lose to all of their AFC East opponents, and would make it twice at home as well. In fact, if the Dolphins lose to the Jets on Monday night, that should be what gets Greer and McDaniel fired this time. Because it doesn't matter how much the team is improving supposedly with culture and accountability if we're going to start the season 0-4 and being handed L's by all of our divisional opponents, including 2 of these 3 games we could and should have won. We had the lead against the Patriots and then surrendered a 90-yard kickoff return touchdown, and then Tua threw an interception on one drive and got sacked on the next drive to seal the loss. Or should I mention that the game was tied between the Dolphins and Bills on Thursday night at Buffalo? You know how long it's been since we've won in Buffalo? And then Zach Steeler commits roughing the punter and Tua throws yet another horrendous interception. Honestly, if it weren't for guys like Russell Wilson, I would say Tua should be the quarterback who gets the most calls to be benched. But the Giants are going through a whole other level of hell with Russell Wilson. Just look at that horrendous goal-to-go scenario where Russell Wilson threw it out of bounds to take. Russell threw it out of bounds and took an intentional grounding penalty. Scrambled, and he threw it out of bounds on the first play. Threw it out of bounds and got called for intentional grounding. Scrambled for a gain of a few yards. Threw it out of bounds again on 3rd and goal, and then threw it out of bounds again on 4th and goal. Like, the Giants are desperately trying to get Dable and Shane fired before McDaniel and Greer. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Mike Hilton has signed with the Colts after Kenny Moore suffered a calf injury. How much you want to bet Mike Hilton becomes a serviceable with the Colts? So yeah, it's not entirely great here. It's not very great if you're the Dolphins fan. Just take a look at the remaining teams without a win this year. 0-3. The East has 2 0-3 teams in 2 0-3 teams in the Jets and Dolphins, and to psychopaths, the most outcome of the Monday night's game would be a tie where neither team gets their first win. So Jets and Dolphins, Texans and Titans also are both 0-3. The Titans being 0-3 is not really a surprise. It's the Texans also falling to 0-3 is alarming. Of course, the Chiefs got spared from it last night because the Giants are completely incompetent. The Giants are now 0-3. The Saints are 0-3. Would you look at this? There are only 2 teams 0-3 in the NFC. The Giants and the Saints, and that's mostly because of the Falcons drubbing on the Vikings, the Panthers drubbing on the Falcons, The Bears finally got a win this week. The Cowboys had that overtime victory against the Giants. And one of the Bills, or excuse me, the Lions and Ravens are going to be 1-2 after tonight. So there are 4 different 0-3 teams in the AFC, with your current division leaders being Bills, Bengals, Colts, and Chargers. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at upcoming schedules, and I will try to predict when each of the 3-0 teams will have their first loss, and when each of the 0-3 teams will have their first. So the Bills are, they play at home against the Saints, home against the Patriots, at Atlanta, at Carolina, the Chiefs, and then at Miami. I'd say the Bills have a legitimate chance of going 7-0. I think the Bills' first loss is either going to be handed to them by the Chiefs or by the Dolphins, or at worst, the Buccaneers after the Chiefs and Dolphins. I'd say Bills on paper are going 7-0 at worst. At Rams, I honestly think that might be the first game the Colts lose, because they're going to be playing a ticked-off Rams team. I don't think Indiana Jones is going to stay undefeated for much longer. The Chargers at Giants versus Commanders at Dolphins. I have a feeling that the Chargers might fall against the Commanders, especially if Jaden Daniels is healthy for that game. Eagles, I'd say the Buccaneers next week might be able to do it, or they might lose to the Broncos the following week. Buccaneers probably are going to fall to the Lions, the only team that might have more dogs than them right now. That isn't until weeks. As for the 49ers, who knows how long they can keep this up, since Mac Jones is injured. Brock Purdy is injured. Nick Bosa's now out for the year. They're still waiting for Joel to get healthy. I think the 49ers are probably going to fall against either the Rams in week 5 or the Buccaneers in week 6. And as for the 0-3 teams, some truly horrendous teams here. I thought that the Texans were going to get their first win potentially this week against a really not that great Jaguars team. So, oh boy, the Saints have to play at Buffalo next week, and then they get to play at home against the Giants. Giants might be the first team to fall to the Saints. I'm calling it right now. The Giants are going to find a way to lose to probably a still winless New Orleans Saints team in week 5. And as Giants, they have to play against the Chargers, at New Orleans, versus the Eagles, at the Broncos, at the Eagles, versus the 49ers, at the Bears, at the Packers, Lions, Patriots. The weakest team on this schedule that they have, if you don't assume that the Saints are going to fall to them, I don't know if the Giants are going to get a win unless they're going to start Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart gives them a far better chance to win football games, but if they stick with Russell Wilson, they might not get a win until they get the Patriots in December. Patriots would totally lose to the Giants even now. It's 0-3. Next week they play a struggling Titans team. If the Texans can't find a way, wouldn't you know it? Not only are there are four winless teams in the AFC, but all 4 of them, 2 apiece, are playing each other next week, meaning without any ties, it is guaranteed that half of those teams will be 1-3 and the other will be 0-4. 1-3 gives you just a little shred of hope. 0-4 means you're cooked. You're well done. If the Texans can't find a way to beat the Titans at home, the season is over for the Texans. There's no recovering from losing to a team as inept right now as the Titans. Titans are looking for a Prime Bowl candidacy. With how suspect they've been playing, though, I'd say the Cardinals might be the first team to lose to the Titans, and this would be in week 5. Cardinals are looking mighty sus right now. And then there's the week 16 game against the Saints, which should be like ultimate tank bowl. And the Jets and Dolphins. This is going to be the toughest to predict. The Jets, the winless Dolphins, play against each other in week 4 on Monday Night Football. And it's become impossible to predict if the Dolphins can or will win any game because they keep having conniption fits at the worst possible times. The Dolphins were a Zach Sealer screw-up and a Tua turn-the-ball-over appearance separated between potential victory and defeat against the Bills. The Bills at Buffalo. So my prediction is I'm going to choose to believe in the power of LOL Jets and say that the Dolphins actually get their acts together, maybe it's just the white jerseys that the Dolphins been forced to wear this entire season so far. They're cursed. And putting on the rivalries jerseys will grant the Dolphins the bit of special power they need to not trip over themselves at the finish line. So I'd say the Dolphins might get their first win on Monday night against the Jets. And that the Jets will actually beat the Cowboys. The Cowboys on October 5th in week 5. I would pay good money to see the look on Cowboys fans' faces if they managed to lose to an 0-4 Jets team. So So I think I might sign off now. Um if for those of you who haven't for those of you who might not have read the update, Jaws is doing a little better, but his jaw is still in a bit of pain. So it's possible. My dad already knows that he won't be able to do the Monday Night Football game stream with me, and I am not sure either if I'm going to be doing the Monday night stream, as it's a lot to do all that the football coverage by myself. But at any rate, my dad is going to be doing on the hockey channel. He's doing I think he's like doing streams from like 10 to 1 every morning now. So yeah. At any rate, for those of you on the hockey channel, my dad will see you guys tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we will probably be picking, if everything goes right, next Sunday we will pick at least one game to stream, and then stream the Monday night abomination between the Jets and Dolphins. An early tank bowl. Yay. All right, thank you for joining me. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for joining me, and yeah. Dolphins, I beg of you, can you just beat the Jets and let us laugh at lol Jets? It'd be a one bright spot in this disaster of a season. All right, take care.